refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
And it must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncers guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day.
Oscar Bevis, IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Blah. Steve, good to see you, mate. How's things?
Not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, good, good. Let's jump in to talk about Amy Andrews now. She hasn't made her IFL debut yet, so I know there'll be a few people kind of needing to know a bit about her, knowing she'd have fought tonight. Just kind of tell us a little bit about Amy before we talk about the performance tonight. I can tell you one thing from my first viewing on her, she looks like a very, very good fighter.
Yeah, Amy, like, unfortunately, like, given she turned pro in, I think, 2019, something maybe like that, 2020, she hasn't had a lot of opportunity to showcase her talent. So she was 2019 ABA Elite Champion at 60 kilos, turned over, she boxed for New Zealand internationally, and then she turned over, COVID happened, managed to get 2 pro fights under her belt, which she won, and then unexpectedly became pregnant. So she's then been out for another...
A bit of a rocky start to the pro career then. COVID and pregnancy just kind of...
Yeah, it could have been smoother, but yeah, I mean, she loves fighting. She really loves fighting. Like I said, I mean, I think her baby's now 6 months old, but I think it was about 5 weeks or 6 weeks after he'd been born, I had to tell her off because I'd heard she'd been sparring, and I'm like, Amy, just had a kid 6 weeks ago. Like, you know, your body needs to heal. But that's what I mean. She loves fighting, and she's been in and around the game for a while now, and she's been in sparring with a lot of the top girls in the country and internationally, actually. Recently sparring Michaela Mayer before her last fight. And yeah, she can compete. She can compete with those girls. So it's a case now of trying to get her on a consistent run of fights and showcase what she can do, and hopefully, yeah, she'll be there competing with those girls in the near future.
Yeah, obviously with the female side, there's not the biggest talent pool, so there is kind of a little bit of a skip between when you first start out on the top. Could we expect to perhaps see her in what we would call a big fight maybe in the next year, 18 months?
Yeah, I think like that would be the plan. So like I said, that was number 3, but it's the first one after a long layoff. For me, like, you know, there's a little bit of nerves and stuff you could see there in that performance. It's only 4 twos, but still, there's a little bit of nerves and stuff, and she just needs to get back into the flow of boxing regularly, getting out, being in front of the lights, and putting on performances, and then hopefully, yeah, like you said, a year, 18 months, hopefully we can try and get a fight with one of the big girls in the division.
Yeah, look forward to seeing Amy's journey. You know, we're going to talk about it. Let's talk about Joe and the defeat to Zhang'S. I kind of want to give you the floor before we talk specifics to just kind of recap over the whole night. Obviously, devastating for Team Joyce. When you kind of walked out of the arena, what was your emotions? Because I know as a boxing man and part of the team, you kind of want to break things down, but I suppose the immediate thing is kind of just disappointment, I guess.
Yeah, of course. Like, you know, he's been on a really good run recently, and you know, Joe, his career, like, he's done well in his career up until this point, but at every step of his career so far, it's always been, he can't do this, he can't do this, he can't do this, right? You know, and he's been proving people wrong up until this point. And then unfortunately, like, he had a bad night that night and did take a loss. And yeah, it's disappointing, but it's one loss. It's not the end of his career. You know, he'll come back and he'll go back to doing what he does. And it sucks on the night, and everybody's down and everybody's disappointed. Obviously, we were concerned about the eye, which now has been checked out and there's no fractures or anything. So his health was the main thing. But, you know, he is a juggernaut. He's called a juggernaut for a reason, and the eye did swell, but nothing broke. So it's pretty healed up now. I saw him the other day, and now it's time for the team to sit down, have a look at what they're going to do, where they're going to go next, and move on.
Yeah, do you think that was perhaps the surprise factor for everyone around boxing and kind of the manner of the defeat? Yes, like you said, kind of nothing broke, but the fact that Joe's been kind of sold as the juggernaut, he's unbreakable, and then the eye just kind of swelled. Do you think that's perhaps why it's kind of made the defeat feel kind of 10 times bigger in that sense? We didn't see Joe get completely outboxed. Yeah. It's kind of the thing he's been sold on. Yeah. He was kind of. So do you think that's why the defeat kind of feels a lot bigger than it is? Yeah,
maybe. I mean, like, the fight got stopped on the eye, but, you know, at that point in the fight, Joe was behind on the cards. Like, I know one judge had Joe up on the cards, but I didn't have him up on my card in the corner. So he was down, like, but we've seen that position from Joe before. So, and the other thing, a little bit surprising for most people probably, is, you know, Joe's taken a lot of shots in fights. If you look at the Parker fight, he took quite a few shots, and he come out and his face had nothing. There was nothing, you know, it barely looked like he'd been in a fight. But this one, obviously, Zhang caught him in the eye, pretty decent shot early on, and then from there he was targeting that one, and it swelled up, and that caused the ending of the fight. And yeah, it's disappointing. I don't think it ruins his image as the Juggernaut. I mean, he got hit with some pretty good shots in there by a big, strong, powerful guy, and he got buzzed in the second round for sure. But you know, he still took the shots, like, so he's still going to be a hard guy to get rid of. And unfortunately, his eye didn't hold up. But yeah, the defeat is disappointing in itself. It wasn't a great performance, but we move on.
So I know for Joe and for all of Team Joyce, you all knew and understood that this was a tough fight. I know people can easily write fights off, but you knew and the team knew this was a tough fight. But was you still surprised in any aspect by Zhang and his performance?
I wouldn't say I was surprised, yeah. I wouldn't say I was surprised. Yes, Zhang was a risky fight. You know, all the stuff has already been said, but here's a southpaw. Joe hasn't fought a southpaw for a while, and the last one he did fight was a smaller southpaw. This is a big man, good amateur pedigree. He's got fast hands. You know, he's tricky, and I forgot what the question was, but what was it again?
Were you surprised by anything that Zhang?
No, to be honest, like I expected, and I think probably the team expected, that the early rounds would be the most difficult rounds to negotiate. So ideally, Joe was supposed to, you know, try not to get caught clean too much early in the early rounds, and then come on as the fight goes on, as Joe does. You know, he boxes a certain way, and so that was what he was looking to do, but unfortunately, it didn't unfold that way on the night, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes you have game plans and they don't unravel the way you expect they would, and unfortunately, by round 6, you know, it got stopped in 6, and there wasn't any opportunity to recover the fight. So it's one for the next fight to put right, and hopefully we can do that. But we've got to see what his managers and his team come up with, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, does it make sense to take the fight next? Because as you said, kind of looking at that fight, whether you're a boxing analyst or not, I can look at that fight and see that there's a way Joe wins it. It's not like he walks away and thinks, fuck me, that's not a winnable fight. So does it just make complete sense to try and jump back in and right the wrong rather than slow the process? Because we know Joe's not the youngest anyway. Does it make sense to jump back in and try and get revenge?
For me, I don't know. Like, would I personally go straight back in? I don't know. It's not my decision at the end of the day. But another thing we've seen with these types of fights, you know, after the Joe Parker fight, nobody wants a piece of Joe Joyce, because Parker was there. He's a former world champion. You know, he's not been stopped by AJ. He's not been stopped by Dillian White or these other guys. And Joe goes in and ends him in the 11th round like nobody's done before. Nobody wants a piece of him. Now everybody probably wants a piece of him because they're going, oh, yeah, he's shit. Oh, we got that. So that opens doors sometimes, okay? So you don't know who's going to crawl out of the woodwork and say they want to fight who might not have taken the fight before. So again,
so you could land a bigger fight on paper than the rematch with Zhang, even though that fight is kind of doubled in magnitude because of the defeat. You feel like Joe could land a bigger fight than the Zhang rematch?
It could happen. It's not like it hasn't happened before. You know, when I was part of Team McGuigan and Carl Frampton, I can't remember the kid's name, unfortunately. We boxed out in Texas, and Carl got dropped twice in the first round, got up and went on and won the rest of the rounds. But after that fight, you know, Leo Santa Cruz wanted to fight him, Scott Quigg wanted to fight him, and those fights went on and happened. And obviously for Carl, it was fantastic. So sometimes out of negative situations, positive things happen. So like I said, I'm not privy to all the discussions that go on behind doors with who's potentially wants to fight, but it could happen, and it wouldn't be the first time. So yeah, we just have to see what presents itself. Yeah.
I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt ring.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day,